public comment, as you know, is welcomed by the CPC. Every speaker will be given 2 minutes. I'm not sure if Jesse is on the line today.
I am.
Okay, great, Jesse. Did anyone sign up for public comment?
Yes, Howard Gale.
Okay, great. Can you get the clock up? And Howard, I presume you're able to unmute yourself. And once you begin talking, Jesse will start the timer and you'll have 2 minutes to share your comments, ideally on topics that are part of our agenda today. Thank you.
1 second, just gotta unmute Howard. Oh, you can talk, Howard. My bad. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Gale, your 2 minutes is up. Thank you so much. I appreciate your joining us for public comment. Jesse, were there any other individuals signed up for public comment?
I do not believe so, but let me do one more check. There is not.
Okay, and did we receive any written public comment?
We have not.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. We will move on to the next part of our agenda, which is updates from department updates. Are there updates from City Council?
Thank you, LaRon. This is Noel Aldrich from Councilmember Herbold's office. The Public Safety and Human Services Committee will be meeting next Tuesday, and on the agenda will be the 2020 annual report for the Office of Police Accountability. Also, in looking at the agenda for today's CPC meeting, I saw there was discussion of the pink umbrella case. So I wanted to let you know that Councilmember Herbold sent some questions to the chief about that last week after his announcement, and he responded. And on Monday morning after council briefings, where there was some discussion amongst council members of this, she did a follow-up. And you can see the email traffic on an article at seccinsight.com. They have a link to all of it and an article about that. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that fitting into the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noel. Is there an update from the mayor's office?
Good morning. No major update from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominique. The Office of Inspector General, is there an update from OIG? Okay, hearing no one rush to the forefront. Oh, I think Lisa Judge might just have entered. Lisa Judge, are you here with us?
1 second.
Lisa Judge, are you here with us?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
You entered just in time for an update.
Oh, wow. Perfect
Yeah,
time.
welcome. Welcome to the meeting. And do you have an update for us?
I do. I have a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Trying to just keep you updated on the Sentinel event review process. We're in final editing of the first wave report now. So we anticipate being able to, once we've had panelists, just make sure that it's an accurate representation of their work thus far. And we verified all of the information, and for accuracy, we'll be releasing that to folks. So that's coming up fairly soon. Yesterday, I've been having talks with Chief Diaz about traffic stops for civil violations and minor traffic infractions. So yesterday, OIG sent a letter to Chief Diaz asking him to reduce or eliminate making traffic stops for civil violations, and to work with OIG and other stakeholders to try to figure out how we can, as a city, do what needs to be done for traffic safety while minimizing those stops where community has to come into contact with police officers unnecessarily. So that's kind of a new development that's going on, and some new work that we're undertaking that hopefully we can figure out how to partner with you folks on. We're involved in the collective bargaining with LRPC, and it's great, I think, having the opportunity to have all three partners be in the Zoom room to represent our interests in accountability as parameters are set up. We really can't talk about any of the details, but I think this was definitely a big move in the right direction, and it's nice to have all of us there. So I'm appreciative of your efforts, your commissioner's efforts, and our OPA partner in doing that. And I think those are really the big items that I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if I mentioned last time, we have an audit ongoing about mask wearing amongst SPD officers. We had a community complaint come in, and so we've got a fairly big project going on that will probably be wrapping up in the next, I would say, month. So that will be work that you can see coming out as well. I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much for the update. If you could forward us the letter around traffic stops, I'd love to read it and make sure that all the commissioners are able to review it, so that we can figure out what may be an appropriate position for the CPC to take.
Yeah, absolutely. I intend to send it out to all the stakeholders today. So I will certainly send that to you right away.
Great, thank you so much.
I have a question.
Hi, Mark.
Hello. So our idea is to limit traffic stops or stop them altogether. Is that my understanding?
Yeah. So this is kind of based on the premise that there's been a lot of attention around traffic stops, really for those kind of infractions that don't put anybody in danger, like expired registration, having a tail light out, failing to signal, things like that. So they're offenses we've asked SPD to consider stopping making stops for, that don't put other people in jeopardy, or don't cause harm. I think this is going to be a layered and a step-by-step approach to reducing these kind of things, but we're not asking SPD to not take care of safety. So if people are engaged in reckless driving or DUI or speeding in school zones, or something like that, that's different than just the officer driving around, running plates and conducting kind of routine traffic stops for minor civil types of things, and then to explore other ways to do enforcement that don't involve face-to-face contact. Is that a helpful answer?
Yes, it is. That helps me understand a little better. Also, can I have a little bit more insight into the mask situation? Was this incident that happened during a protest?
No, we don't do individual incidents. That's OPA's responsibility. But this was a complaint from a community member that came in about really systemic issues with officers in the East Precinct not wearing masks, like on a larger scale. So it's a look at the underlying, like, greater systemic issues behind that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure thing, Commissioner Mullins. Thank you. It's nice to see you. Usually you're just on the phone.
Thank you so much, Director Judge. Are there any other questions for OIG? Okay, hearing none. Is there an update from the monitoring team? Don't think I saw anyone from the monitoring team here. There is, I believe, a meeting happening later on today with the monitoring. Oh, there you are, Ron Ward. You're muted, Ron.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Welcome. Do you have an update from the monitoring team?
Nothing beyond what we articulated at our meeting last week with you and Ms. Goodman and our Executive Director, Brandy Grant. We're continuing to work on editing and synthesizing the methodology, which will be a part of the next version of the monitoring plan submitted to the court for filing in June. As you noted earlier, the monitor is in town and there will be a meeting at 1 o'clock today to which the CPC has been invited, along with many of the other stakeholders in this process.
Great. Thank you so much, Ron. Is there an update from DOJ?
No, good morning. I will also be at that meeting today, and I'm happy to answer questions either here or at that meeting, but nothing more.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. I believe that completes our department updates. Erin?
Thank you. We'll now move to CPC updates and the co-chair updates. One of the first ones was to discuss the fact that Laurent, myself, and Shailene will be attending that meeting this afternoon with the monitoring team. And I did want to make sure that folks know that we do have a regular Zoom meeting that we do with the monitoring team as well. And then the other thing I wanted to touch base on is work groups. Emily is doing the final coordination with everyone to get these scheduled. So if you're getting an email or a phone call, we really are, need responses to make sure that we get these up and running. If you have any questions or if you haven't been contacted and you're curious, we can assist making sure that you are connected with Emily for that. I actually will stop there and just see if anybody does have any questions about work groups assignments or how that's going. Okay, that is the ones that I have on my list. I should also actually mention that we had the meeting with the strategic planning group as a full commission, and since then the strategic planning group has met and are finalizing our process by which the strategic planning consultants will gather information for input into the strategic planning from partners and community members and that process. So that is underway. I think that's all I have. Laurent, do you have anything additional to add to co-chair updates? Okay, great. Brandy, Executive Director updates.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erin. Erin, you actually took one of mine. I was going to give an update about the strategic plan process too. I will keep mine brief, you all, today, just because I know we have quite a bit on the agenda, but I wanted to give some really specific highlights and kind of kudos. The State Legislative Agenda Committee wrapped up and did a debrief last week, and that was also something that was open to the full commission. And so I want to thank everybody that participated in that committee, all of the hard work that went into it. It was our first time having a really strong voice in state reform this year and participating in legislative session. And so I look forward to the recommendations that were made and the things that we hope to improve on and continue to track for next year. Operationally, I just have a couple. We were able to connect with Dominique from the mayor's office, and thank you, Dominique. I know you're on this call. We're hoping to have a more improved IT response and smoother process, and we have someone that's been assigned to the office to provide some point and run triage for us for all IT matters, so that should be helpful. And then second, I wanted everyone to know that we're one step closer to our board management platform, and that we went through all the proper channels for security approval, IT provisions, etc. And we're hoping to have a more in-depth update for you all, like Aaron mentioned, regarding the strategic work group very soon, and just the stages where we're at with that. Finally, please make sure everyone you are looking at your emails. The OPMA training that we're having later in the meeting today, there is some supplemental material that will also be coming out to each one of you as commissioners to talk about what our internal process is, and just give a little bit better of an explanation. We know about a week or two ago you all received a request, and we didn't have a lot of details around it. So we just want to make sure you all are armed with the resources you need around what the CPC's responsibilities are to public disclosure requests. Other than that, that is all I have. And I just want to again thank everybody for being here and for the public comment that was made earlier. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Now we come to new CPC business. Does anyone have anything that they would like to bring before the commission? Okay, not hearing any. We will move to the next section of our agenda, which is Office Police Accountability Updates. Laron?
Great, thank you. Today we are joined by Director Myerberg from OPA to talk about a couple of issues that have come to the forefront in the past few weeks. Director Myerberg, it would be really helpful, I think, to give a bit of background about OPA to make sure that we're all on the same page about the work that you all do. We have new commissioners, and there are members of the community here. So if you wouldn't mind giving a bit of background.
Sure.
And then we'd love from there to have a discussion about this national article that discussed officers who kill multiple people or who are involved in multiple uses of deadly force, that focused on an SPD officer and raised some concerns. We'd like to just hear your thoughts about that and have an open discussion. And then also, the pink umbrella incident, the recommendation for discipline that was overturned. And I will leave it to you.
Great. So just to start, good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Myerberg. I'm the director of the Office of Police Accountability. I've been the director since July of 2017. And I am a civilian, so I came to the OPA from the city attorney's office, where I did a number of things, including working with the CPC. I worked on the accountability legislation. I worked on police cases. I worked on the consent decree. So I have a pretty diverse background from the city attorney's office. But anyway, I've been in charge of OPA since 2017. OPA is a hybrid agency. When I came into OPA, it was totally sworn. So there was a civilian deputy director and and some civilian admins, but besides that, everyone else was sworn. We've since changed substantially, where now all of our supervisors are civilian, including our former captains and lieutenants, and we now have 2 civilian investigators, and we expect likely more as a result of this next collective bargaining. Basically, for all intents and purposes, we are the internal affairs for Seattle, for the Seattle Police Department. We have jurisdiction over everybody and everything, all SPD's employees, and all conduct, whether on duty or off duty. We don't investigate criminal matters, so we're focused on administrative cases, meaning policy violations, and we're not allowed by contract to look at criminal cases. So we're required to refer those to outside entities. And that's kind of the overarching who we are and what we do. I'm happy to answer more questions if commissioners have them specifically, but I'll move on to the article if that's okay, Laron. Okay, so as Laron had mentioned, there was an article that was published, God, I want to say 3 months or so ago now, maybe 2 months ago now, that focused on officers who were repeat shooters, who had who had been involved in more than one officer involved shooting. They did focus on one officer who had been involved in multiple shootings, and he was involved in one shooting that OPA had investigated, which was the Ryan Smith fatal shooting. And the reporter sought comment from OPA about a couple of things. First, about what the finding was in that case, about how SPD currently responds to people in crisis that may be armed, and then also about some of the I guess I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, is some of the protocols in place for identifying repeat shooters, and this is, I think, is the biggest concern that Laurent had mentioned as a result of our earlier meeting, was what is OPA doing, or how are we analyzing people that have shot multiple times or have fired their weapon multiple times. Oh, and I should mention too, Laurent had mentioned this and I forgot it. The reporter also referenced a case from 2014 where there was a finding, and I haven't seen the decision yet, but supposedly there was a finding from a court that the officer may not have been fully candid during a legal proceeding. So, and the reporter had asked OPA what we had done with that case, and I looked in our system and there was no evidence that we had ever investigated it in 2014. Of course, that's before my time and before we went into our current IA Pro computerized system. So, but it doesn't look like we investigated it. So there was a couple, I think, issues that Laurent had flagged, was to say, okay, how are we looking at people who have shot multiple times? How are we addressing, these types of cases where someone may, where a prosecutor's office or a court may identify dishonesty or may identify misconduct? How are we addressing those cases? And I guess I can answer both. The latter is easier to answer insofar as we do have a protocol set up with all the different prosecuting attorneys' offices. So city attorney's office, King County prosecuting attorney's office, and the U.S. attorney's office to receive complaints from them. So I think in the last year, I've gotten a complaint from each of those entities. And generally our expectation is that if they identify misconduct, dishonesty, if they see reporting issues during their prosecution that they have concerns with, that they would make those referrals to OPA. Generally, the way the referrals are done is that either Dan Clark at the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, I think it was Tessa Gorman at the U.S. Attorney's Office, or one of the supervisors, Kelly Harris, or someone else at the City Attorney's Office will contact me directly with the case, and we'll make the referral, and then we'll initiate an investigation. One thing we're doing, I think in a couple of weeks, I have a call with a committee at the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is to develop actually a written protocol. So it exists or lasts past my time and past my personal relationships with these folks. And that's something that when I talked to governance, CPC's governance committee, that I offered to run by you all and to have your eyes on and approval before it goes into effect. But basically, we're already doing this. So if this happened, if this case that was talked about from 2014 happened today, my expectation is that there would be a referral and that we would know about it and that we would have initiated an investigation. And honestly, I don't know, to be totally frank, I don't know what the gaps were in 2014 that allowed this to slip through. So the harder question, I think, for us to assess at OPA is the concept of repeat shooters and people that have shot multiple times. I mean, I think certainly that does raise a concern because most officers will never draw their firearm during the course of their career, and most officers almost all officers will never fire. So the question is, does that raise a concern? In some respects, perhaps it does, but I think we need to be very careful at OPA to look at each case on its individual merits. So certainly, while it's questions that we would ask during the interview, we would want to assess. I don't think I could. I don't think a decision could be upheld if I based a sustained finding on the fact that they had shot someone previously. So I don't have a perfect answer to this. It's something that we certainly consider, but I think we're still evolving into to what extent and how we consider it. So those are my comments, Laurent, about the article. I'm not sure if I hit all of your points, but if there's other questions that you have or that someone else has on the CPC, I'm happy to address those. I can see Mark Mullen's facial expressions, so I'm curious to see what he agrees with it.
Yes, can I? Go ahead, Reverend Walden.
Well, thank you so much. I just have a quick question. I mean, a quick comment, because this is something that we've talked about more than once, and I've talked to you about it more than once. Because I mean, going back to Spalding, I mean, there's many officers that have been in the last at least 8 years that is involved with shooting. Though, if you pulled up the names of the officers or the incident, you're going to see that, and that's just something that you and I have had heated conversations about more than once, about the fact that it's multiple shooters, not only here but around the country. I mean, like you said, most officers don't do. You know, most officers can go 30 years and not ever shoot anyone, but the ones who do are the ones who continue to do that. And I'm glad that there's a national. I'm glad that it's going to a national attention, because I've been asking people about trying to do the research on it, and to try to find out how local groups, or like us, or the outside groups, can bring some pressure to look at this and to talk about it, because it does need to be discussed. Even in the Shay Taylor's case, one of those officers had already previously been part of an officer involved shooting a few years before that. So if you go case by case, I mean, and that's maybe something you can't do, but maybe we can find somebody else to do that research. So thank you. That's all I have to say about it.
And I apologize, Harriet. I should have mentioned that. And I mentioned that during governance. And I remember that we had pretty extensive conversations about this. And I think it was 2019, early 2019. And we did go over this, and you had flagged the concern. And it's something that we have been thinking about. I mean, I guess where I'm stuck is I don't quite know what the next steps are. I mean, maybe this is a collaborative project to be working on with CPC and OIG and OPA. It's we're just in a tricky spot, because I'm looking at cases on their facts, not kind of systemically, meaning the years prior and the shootings prior. But I would be willing to, I mean, obviously make whatever data that you all need available, and to work with you all to assess this issue in whatever way you see fit.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that, because it's been a burning issue for me, not only for me, but from other police accountability, because we've tracked these shootings for years and years. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Officer Mullins?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Director Myerberg, my question to you is that I hear what I'm hearing is we're talking about multiple shootings by officers. Are we looking at the circumstance of the shooting, or just the fact that an officer has shot twice or 3 times, or how many times in his career?
Yeah, I think that was, and that goes directly to my point. Thanks. And maybe I wasn't clear enough. I mean, I think from my perspective, when I look at a case, I am looking at the facts of that case, that specific case. Was that shooting consistent with policy, or did it violate policy? Generally, unless there's a reason why it's relevant, i.e. like your decision making, why you made a decision, flawed decision making, I don't think that the fact that you were involved in prior shootings would by itself be relevant to determine the facts, or whether or not a second shooting was consistent with policy. But I certainly think it's information that I struggle to know what to do with and how to assess it. So I'm not here to say that I have any answer. I'm just here to say that it's certainly something that we have looked at, that we have seen, that I don't know whether it's a coincidence that you have people that have shot multiple times and most people have never shot. It could be a function of just simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time multiple times. It could be a function of your shifts. It could be a function of many different things. And I don't know for a fact what it would be.
It's circumstance of call. It's basically, I could go out and go on my shift, and as many of you have already commented on, you could go 30 years without getting in a shooting, but that's just a lucky officer. Okay. And remember that pulling your gun, unholstering your gun is not the same as shooting your gun. So I heard you say that many officers could go many years without pulling their guns, and that's not necessarily true at all. I think all of us, almost in a given day or week, have to pull our guns. It's just a matter of whether you're pointing your gun at someone or because officers in many situations have to pull their guns to be at the ready just in case. And not necessarily pointing their gun at anyone, but just being able to be at the ready in case something's happening, such as searching a house in a burglary situation or something like that. So there's quite a bit. I don't want us to get mixed up into terms that will make officers look like we're gun happy when we're not. And then when officers get into multiple shootings, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a circumstance of that officer's career and the things that he's ran into.
Yes, and thank you so much, Commissioner Mullins and Officer Mullins. And I think that may be true in some cases, but I don't know if we can just presume that an officer who's engaged in multiple shootings, it's just the circumstances of the incidents. I think in this article, there were some really concerning quotes from Officer Myers about the fact that he, just had much more confidence to use deadly force, was much more willing to like rush into situations. And so, I think we have to look at this, very broadly, both like, yes, it can be circumstance, but also there's a potential that there could be problem officers or problematic decision-making that escalate situations to a need to use deadly force. And Officer or Director Myerberg, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness around sort of, helping us think about how we incorporate, more holistic information about an officer's use of deadly force that may include, instances where they have harmed other community members, even if that isn't necessarily on point for analyzing a particular instance. And I saw that Austin had his hand up.
Yes, just to build on what you said, Laurent. I have to push back on the idea that the fact that an officer has been involved in a previous shooting isn't relevant. It's directly relevant. It has to be relevant. When I was in Afghanistan, every patrol, how you approach every patrol is predicated on how previous patrols have turned out. When you're going into dangerous situations, you base your decision-making, you base your actions off of what you've done in the past. And there's really no other way to do that just as a human being. And so if you have officers who've been involved in previous shootings who are now involved in additional shootings, whether they've been or not they've been involved in a previous shooting is directly relevant and does have to be factored in. There's really no other way around it. There's no way to understand the officer's decision-making without understanding the officer's past experiences.
Thank you so much, Austin. I see a hand up from an iPhone. Okay, it's Ron Ward. Ron, did you have a question? Or
Commissioner Baker or Executive Director Grant, do you mind forwarding me a copy of the article so that the monitoring team can peruse it? And also, Director Myerberg, we would appreciate a copy of the written protocol that you alluded to earlier.
Got it.
we will send it. Also, there's a link, hyperlink in the agenda, so that all of the public and everyone should be able to, very easily address the article, which is called "Most Officers Never Fire Their Guns, Some Kill Multiple People," but we'll forward it to you also.
Thank you.
Yes. Commissioners, are there any other questions or comments that people have?
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
The Seattle streets is not Afghanistan, and we have to approach police work totally different than we approach things from the military standpoint. They're not the same, not at all.
Absolutely, Officer Mullins, and I think we all agree that we don't want our streets policed like war zones. But there is information that all of us have that could be really useful. So Officer Myerberg, did any commissioners have anything else that they wanted to say or questions that they had for Director Myerberg on this particular issue? Okay.
Moving
Director,
on. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, finish up. Sorry, just one more thing. I mean, I think this discussion is exactly why it makes sense. I mean, and even if you don't agree with one side or the other, I think it makes sense to more fully assess these matters. Like, there is clearly discussion left to be had, and I think this will be perfect for work groups that are going to be looking at OPA cases systemically and OPA decisions systemically. I just think it's ripe for more conversation, and why not you all doing it? So anyway, thank you for the conversation. Happy to support that work. So moving on to the next topic. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the facts for the pink umbrella case, because I think most people are aware of what occurred. So this was East Precinct, and it was a large scale dispersal and the use of less lethal tools, including CS gas, to disperse a crowd from the precinct. And basically the goal of our investigation was to determine whether the acts and decisions to disperse and then deploy less lethal tools was consistent with policy. So probably the fundamental question that we looked at during our investigation was who made the decisions. One issue that we saw in an earlier case from, I think, May 30th or May 31st, was that there was a lot of confusion about commands, about who was responsible for a certain decision. So first of all, sometimes it was as confusing as who was the incident commander, who was in charge, who was making certain decisions, and were the decisions that were being made on high being delegated. First of all, were things being communicated from assistant chiefs and captains down to lieutenants, for example, or was there an over delegation of responsibility to lieutenants? That's one thing that we looked at, and we actually issued a management action to say like that had to be corrected to have more clarity and conformity in command. So during this investigation, we interviewed 5 individuals, commanders, who we believed may have been involved in the overall decision making. And this included 2 assistant chiefs, 2 captains, and then a lieutenant. So ultimately what we were able to determine, kind of based on the totality of the interviews, was that the lieutenant made the ultimate call. So while there were other people that were above the lieutenant in the chain of command, he admittedly made the decision to disperse the crowd because of the threat that he perceived, and also made the decision to deploy less lethal tools. And again, this was consistent with what with the interviews as well as the radio traffic that we listened to from that day. So there are times where a supervisor will make a decision, or a supervisor will direct force to occur. And in that situation, we may hold the supervisor accountable for the overall decision making. So if a supervisor said to an individual, I want you to disperse this crowd right now and throw blast balls here, 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 we likely would hold the supervisor accountable because the supervisor directed the force. That's not what we saw here. What we saw here was that there was an individual decision that was made by a lieutenant to take these actions, in part because that decision making was delegated to the lieutenant. So again, that kind of formed the basis for our decision and why we went the way we went, and why we issued the sustained finding against the lieutenant. Our understanding from the chief's letter and subsequent statements is that the chief believes that accountability lies with others, meaning that perhaps, and I don't have exact information, but perhaps that there's someone higher up in the chain of command that he believes is responsible, given the role as an incident or overall commander. That is certainly within the chief's prerogative to decide, and it's within the chief's prerogative to reverse OPA's findings. And just like the CPC, I think we're waiting to hear what that decision is and what the chief is going to do. So that's really my update right now. I don't have really any other information than you all have, and I'm just waiting to see kind of what else evolves, and whether or not OPA is asked to do more investigation, what that is, or what decision making the chief is going to engage in.
Laura,
Oh,
I guess I'm struck by a couple of things in this situation, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of CPC, OPA, and OAG being, the accountability system, and that when something, kind of goes against that, it makes us all question the strength of the system as a whole. But from what you've described and what I've read, it appears that there was information that you did not have in making that decision. And what is that process look like, where somehow there's information that was either, purposefully withheld or not given so that you could make the full attention? Do you feel that you had the full information, or that there appears to be new information?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't, there's no new information that I'm aware of, meaning that like we know everything that occurred. We have the radio traffic. We know who made the decisions. We've interviewed all the commanders from that day. There's no new information. The new information may be something that the chief is considered. The new information may be the chief thinking in his mind, I believe, given my view of the chain of command, that I want to hold this assistant chief responsible. That may be the new information. It's not new evidence. There's nothing else out there. I mean, the facts are what they are. There's nothing else that exists. So I don't know whether the chief misspoke when he said there's new information, but I don't know of any new information. And certainly my expectation would be that if there was new information, that OPA is the investigative arm of the Seattle Police Department and of our accountability system, that would be referred to my office.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments for Director Myerberg on this?
So if I could just pick one more thing, Laurent, and just to respond to another question that Erin asked, her first point that I didn't address was, Erin, one thing that you had mentioned was, everyone in the accountability system kind of reaches a decision that says, this went wrong or this was out of policy, and then it's just reversed, right? And the system's just sitting there saying, okay, what do we do? I mean, this is definitely, it is a unique aspect of our system in that when it was created in 2017, it gave the chief the authority to overturn OPA decisions. Like, this is the chief's ability to do so. It is very rare, and I'm happy to send you all, we had created a spreadsheet just to chart all these things, but it's very rare, meaning that, in 2020, it happened 0 times. I think in 2019, it happened once, and 2020, so it's usually it's around less than 1% of disciplinary decisions are reversed. This just happens to be a very, very important decision for the community and a very impactful decision for the community. But it was deliberate in that a decision was made to allow the chief this discretion, and the CPC and others that were writing this ordinance put in place the notification requirement where the chief had to notify everyone in the system, the council, the mayor, because of what you're seeing right now, where there is significant pressure to make this decision, to overturn this decision. You can't just kind of, like it was in the past, change it and then walk away and not worry about it. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure just, calling me in front of you, calling the chief in front of you, the city council, their work, people, articles. And like, I think there's a lot of pressure on the chief to do something and to not just reverse. And in that respect, the system is working insofar as that's what it was intended to do. But again, it raises the question, and as we continue to assess systems, is there other changes that you all want to consider or recommend? Should the chief be the final decision maker? I mean, I think you would have to look at charter changes and other system changes, but certainly everything is up for negotiation and discussion. And I'm not advocating for it one way or the other. I think there's benefits to all these different systems. But I didn't want to let that point lie, Erin, and I think it's a really good one, and I think it's really important. And I'm happy to send again to the CPC to send that spreadsheet of all the cases from the last 4 years and what's been reversed and what hasn't been reversed.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
definitely. Okay.
Reverend Walden? Oh, you're muted, Reverend Walden.
Take care of that now. Okay. Thank you. I mean, and this was really troubling for me. I mean, that the reversal, and I did reach out, and talk to the chief about it. I think that it sends a real bad sister, unless there's somebody higher up on the chain of command that will be reprimanded. It was too much harm done to people out there that day. I mean, and somebody might say that was just a meme with the umbrella, but it was a lot of harm done, And as a mother of somebody who was actually harmed that day, I was really upset with that. I was upset with the reversal. And so I will wait to see what's going to happen, because it makes it difficult for people who actually want to work in collaboration and to collaborate with SPD and to work for unity in the community. It makes it difficult on this reversal for people who actually want to work together. And also, how do you bring in the people? You got the families out there who actually are talking about the violence in the community. So that makes it hard to work in collaboration right now. And I mean, that's what I said when I reached out. This reversal makes it hard for collaborators who really want to work in collaborating around Seattle and going forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Reverend Walden. I do want to give, and not to put Ron Ward on the spot, but does the monitoring team, Ron Ward, have any thoughts or anything that they want to say about this issue? Any comments?
No. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, we do not at this juncture. And in order for us to address it, either us or I believe DOJ, it would have to be something that proves to be a systemic problem. And I think that goes to Andrew's comment that if in fact there is a problem or there needs to be improvement in the system that was promulgated by the 2017 legislation, it is up to the oversight accountability partners to address that.
Great, thank you so much, Ron. Okay, are there any other comments or questions on this issue? Officer Mullins? You're muted, Officer Mullins.
Okay. I just wanted to ask a question about the frontline officers, and is there a perceived thought that these umbrellas are not a threat to officers? Can I ask that to Director Myerberg?
No, and I think in the DCM, you know, I expressly discussed, you know, some of the umbrellas have, you know, they're pointed out so that the spikes are pointed out at officers. They're put in officers' faces to block their view. I don't believe that at all. But I mean, like we talked about, like everything, like, and even like you said before, everything's circumstance dependent, right? Like not all umbrellas represent a threat, but certainly not all umbrellas are unthreatening, right? So I think we've definitely seen circumstances where they've been threatening, and we've addressed those accordingly and have not sustained the pulling of umbrellas away, for example. Sorry, I have a very disturbed baby in the house right now, so I apologize for that. But one other thing I wanted to mention, so hopefully Officer Mullins, that answers your question, but one other thing that we're trying to do is we're developing a page on our website that will be public, and I mentioned this to governance, and I just wanted to make everyone aware of it. And again, this isn't a panacea, not that's going to fix anything, but I think we'll have a page on our website that will now list all of the cases that have been reversed, the stats of reversal, the letters that were sent back and forth, like for example, the chief's disagreement letter. If the chain of command disagreed with OPA, that disagreement letter. You know, for example, we would include correspondence from the CPC, we would include correspondence from the city council, so that it can all be in one place to make sure that it's transparent. And I think it's just, you know, it doesn't fix anything, but I think for building confidence and trust, or at least understanding in what we do and why we do it, I think that's important. So as that develops, we'll share it with you all and to get your feedback on it. But I think, again, you know, just trying to put more information out there.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Myerberg.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming to our meeting today.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And thank you all the commissioners for your thoughtful questions and comments. We are at time, and so I will hand it over to Erin for the next bit of our agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Laurent. And now we are up for our annual Open Public Meetings Act training that will be conducted by the City Attorney's Office. For many of you new commissioners, you've heard OPMA thrown around and put at the bottom of emails, but this is your opportunity to learn what it is and how it impacts the way we work. And I do want, and I know Gary's going to go into this, to clear, that we're going to learn the difference between OPMA and PDR and how those operate differently in the work that we do. And with that, Gary,